meeting. There we go.
All right, can everybody hear us okay?
Mm-hmm.
All right, very good. We will, where's my auditor?
Danny.
Oh, there's Danny in the middle of the screen. I got a new perspective here since we turned everything around. I've got to look at different screens, so. Danny, if you would call the roll, please.
Okay, Keisha Donner.
Here.
Mark Ramey.
Here.
Steve McCombs.
Here.
Very good. Well, this morning's agenda is the quarterly economic development meeting for Marion County. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve today's agenda.
Second.
Danny?
McCombs.
Aye.
Ramey.
Aye.
Donner.
Aye.
Very good. All right, thank you. Carla, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Yes, I'll let everybody know that we are recording this meeting so that you know that and are aware of that. Certainly want to welcome everyone. We have a full agenda, a lot of items to update everybody on that are happening that we want to make sure everyone's involved and know about. So we will get started with that. Probably the first item that is on everybody's minds as we're meeting virtually is broadband. And so I've invited Stacy Levon from the Greater Des Moines Partnership to give us an update as to what's happening now with the surveys that are out there for businesses and for our residents to participate in and to be part of the study. So Stacy, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, thanks, Carla. I'm going to share my screen here just a minute. Hopefully everyone can see that. Appreciate the opportunity to have a few minutes to talk to you about the broadband survey. I believe we've talked with this group briefly, and kind of you are aware that we're doing a broadband study across the 11 counties in central Iowa. So the survey is part of that larger study, and it's really designed to identify the gaps in availability, the speed and performance, affordability, reliability, as well as the adoption that people are taking to access broadband. So if they have broadband access at their home, are they subscribing to it and are they using it? And if not, why? So we have two surveys that are currently out. We launched them last week. One is for residences, one is for businesses. The residents, we need to understand who has access and where at their home in order to access items such as being able to work from home, remote learning, healthcare, whatever activities they need to do from their home. And then in addition for the businesses, we need to understand that the availability of broadband or lack of availability, how is that impacting their business operations? You know, can they process the credit cards? Were they able to switch to online sales? Just kind of trying to get some of that general understanding as to the gaps that we have within the region. And we will pull all that information together at the end of this study. It will be used to inform a GIS database where we will be able to see where there's a lack of broadband, and then we'll be able to tie it to providers are in the area. These providers may be able to get service there, and there's a business case for them to do so. And if not, then how do we pull in grant funding, and we would have data and help make a case as to why we would use grants to help fill the gaps that we have. These are the 11 counties that are participating in the study. You'll see Marion County is here. It's the partnership's 10 county region plus Story County. They decided to join us for this study because they have a need as well. So as I mentioned, there are two surveys, a residential and a business survey. We are asking business owners and decision makers to take the business survey at their place of business using their primary internet connection at their place of business. We are asking residents to take this residential survey at their home, again, using their primary internet connection at their house. The survey, it ranges from 20 to 25 questions. There's a logic tree, so depending on how you answer one question, it will take you to the next question. Very simple to answer. It should take people less than 10 minutes. We are seeing an average time on page of about 5 minutes, so anticipating it takes about 5 minutes to complete the survey. One piece of this survey is that while they are filling it out, we will be asking them to take a speed test during the survey. So that is why they need to be connected to their primary internet connection. There's a link that they will click on. It will take them to the speed test, which takes maybe a minute to do, 30 seconds. And then we will ask them to type the result of that speed test into the survey. And that's the important thing. And we are asking that they use the primary internet connection, not a cellular connection. If cellular is their only internet connection, it's okay for them to use cellular, but otherwise we want them taking the primary internet connection at that address, because a cellular service moves where we want to be able to tie an address to the speed test. So as we said, the survey is launched. It's open now. It will be open through April 27th. The picture that you see is one of our promotional pieces. Carla has access to a toolkit which has some social media posts, some printed materials, and items that she can then take and customize for Marion County. We are asking you to help promote and to push out this survey in your communities throughout the entire county. We need people from cities to the rural areas. We need socioeconomic differentials. We need to understand the entire population and how they are accessing the internet. And so that's pretty much it. The one last thing I wanted to do is I wanted to pull up, when they click on or when they go to Central Iowa Broadband Survey, this is the webpage they will come to, and here is where they can take the residential survey, and here's where they can choose to take the business survey. So with that, I will answer any questions.
Are there any questions out there? One of the things I will make you aware of also is that we have updated a flyer for our local area. So if you would like copies at your business, at organizations you have, if you have any need for copies from a paper standpoint, we were more than happy to provide those. If you want digital information or you want the flyer digitally, we can certainly provide that as well. So just let either myself, Karen at the PACE Alliance, or Emma at the Knoxville Chamber know. We all three have those documents and can share those with you. We just need your help in getting the word out to folks.
Hey, Carla.
And one more thing, that we are right now trying to get a system set up where Carla will be able to see how many results are coming in and where they're coming from within the county. We hope to have that to you by the end of this week or next.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. Any other questions for Stacy? Certainly, like I said, this is one of those projects, it's very needed and we need your help right now. This is the critical time to get people to fill out those surveys. I think when we were looking, we need at least 1,000 people in Marion County to fill out this survey. So that's a heavy lift. And so we need everyone's help to get that, because that's the only way that the survey will really have value to us back as we look to expand broadband and find those solutions, because we have to first identify the true gaps and understand that. So we thank you all. And if you have any questions, like I say, we're more than happy to work with you and help you in ways, provide you the tools that you need, whether it's digitally or in paper, to get out to the people you know. So thank you, Stacy. We'll move on now to a couple updates I have for you. As you all may have realized, the Marion County approved becoming part of an economic development district. I had the opportunity yesterday to talk to the folks that are driving that from the MPO. Just a couple things to update you on that process. The next step for that process is they will be forming a steering committee representing people from each of the 7 counties that are part of that. For the Economic Development District, the counties are Polk, Marion, Warren, Dallas, Boone, Story, and Jasper. And so they hope to get the steering committee put together in the middle part of April. After the steering committee is put together, they will work on the SEDS document, which is kind of basically a regional economic development plan. And that will require some stakeholder meetings. So you may be seeing within the month or two after, in mid-April to probably late May, early June, some options for stakeholder meetings to be part of that, to put in your input. Once the SEDS document gets identified as far as goals and they go through the SWOT analysis, then the next step would be to tie projects into that strategic plan. That'll come over the summer. Communities will have an opportunity to submit projects. So there's another opportunity for you to become involved. So throughout this process, in the next several months, there's going to be several options for city folks, for economic development folks, and private citizens, as well as businesses, to become involved in creating this SEDS document. Once the document is completed, their goal is to, by the end of August, 1st of September, submit that application so that then hopefully by the early part of 2022, that would be we would be an approved economic development district. And really, a lot of the help of what that provides is for grant writing and access to especially federal funding, but also some state funding. So it's a tool for cities, especially with economic development projects. If you'd like to learn more or make sure that you're involved, please let me know. I will be sending out the notifications for stakeholder meetings to this group. But certainly another opportunity for you to be involved in what we're doing regionally as far as economic development planning. The next item is the targeted industry study. I want to thank all of you that participated on March 23rd in those stakeholder meetings and one-on-one meetings. We had well over 50 people involved in those meetings, providing input to our consultant who's working on targeted industry analysis. We should, in the next couple of weeks, see kind of what they synthesized between your input that they received in the stakeholder meetings, as well as the data research that they're doing. The goal of this project is to identify anywhere from 4 to 5 targeted industries for us to work on as far as business attraction, with the goal to diversify our economy and build on our assets in manufacturing. So that study is targeted to be completed the end of May, 1st of June. The next project we're working on is economic gardening pilot. We're working with Mahaska County on that project through our Opportunity Squared region. That project is targeted to stage 2 companies. The applications for stage 2 companies should come out the end of April, and we will be taking 2 Marion County companies through that process, providing them kind of research as far as intelligence and how to grow their business. And so that's a new program as well that we're piloting this year. And the final program that I have to update you on is Teaching for the Workforce. If you know educators in the Marion County area or surrounding counties, it is a great opportunity for them to earn continuing education credits. This year, the program will be all online, so actually any educator in Iowa could probably take the program, but it focuses on our industry and their needs as far as STEM occupations, and we're very happy to work with DMAC in delivering this program. It will take place during the month of June. So it's an opportunity for educators to really learn firsthand from our businesses. And certainly we are in the process right now of identifying speakers and collecting videos and putting the whole course together online, which will be done through Blackboard. And we certainly thank DMAC Business Resources for their help in developing this program so we can continue to deliver the program. We had to cancel the program last year because of COVID. We had 30 teachers signed up and hated to do that. We're hopeful this year we will have more teachers sign up, and we know for sure because we're doing it this hybrid way online. There will be a mix of live sessions as well as pre-recorded modules that they go through throughout the month of June. So that's another great program happening. So is there any questions? I went through those programs fairly quickly, but there's 4 programs that I wanted you to know about. There's going to be opportunities for folks to participate and become involved. Do you have any questions on any of those?
Are we looking at any specific?
Hearing none, I'll move to the next portion of the program. And I'd like to share with you our annual business report. This is something that we do every year. I'm going to kind of skip through some of the slides because it's a fairly lengthy presentation. We will be putting the entire presentation as well as the written document up on our website probably within the next week or so, but wanted to give you a sneak peek of what's happening as far as what we learned from our existing employers. So I'm going to share my screen, so wait just a second. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can, Carla.
Thank you, Karen. So the Marion County Development Commission has kind of refined what we look at and what our role is over the next years. And we've really settled on this kind of circular set of buckets. Business development, which is business attraction, but it's also existing businesses. It's entrepreneurial development, startups, talent development, both the talent of those coming through our pipeline in the schools, but also the retraining and talent of our individuals, as well as recruiting talent. And finally, placemaking and what's happening in our communities to make our communities livable places, and truly the connections that are needed to make all those things happen. So as we look to navigate our future, those are the buckets I'm going to be talking about today. And in the annual business report, you'll see some key indicators for economics. You'll also hear the voices from our prime employers in the study that we did during July and August during 2020, as well as some of the initiatives, which I'm not going to go over as much because we just had an update on many of those. This slide provides the key findings, the key data, both good and bad, that we pulled out from the study. One, we know our population numbers remain stable. We know that from our prime employers, talking with them, that nearly a third of them plan to expand in the next 3 years, and you can see how that compares with Iowa. We understand that there's an 807 gap between the number of job openings on Iowa Works and the number of people employed in Marion County. So we have 800 more jobs basically than we do people. If every person who is on unemployment could qualify for one of the jobs that are available, that net gap you'll see later is 800. As far as the job diversity index, this is part of the reason we're doing the targeted industry analysis. You'll see that we're very heavy on the occupations in the manufacturing sector. We know that nearly 72% of our prime employers are having recruitment problems, which is even higher than what's happening across Iowa. And probably one of the bigger aha moments for me this year when I was looking through the data was in Marion County, our number one occupation is assemblers. And when I look at the occupation forecast, it is also the number one occupation that has the biggest decline. So there's going to be some opportunities for retraining as we move to the future, as companies automate and do those kinds of things, to understand how do we retrain those assemblers so that they can fit into the jobs of tomorrow. Childcare continues to be a growing issue with our prime employers. And a good, positive, interesting stat that I found was that 52.4% of our residents live within a half mile of a park, which is tremendously more than what is the average in the U.S. This year we had 108 total new housing permits in 2020. That is both city and rural unincorporated. We know that 31.3% of our prime employers do not have a succession plan. And that's also very shocking. It's a training opportunity for us. This is not your mom and pop shops. These are our larger companies, and a third of them do not have a succession plan in place. The other issue that was identified when we talked to our prime employers was some of the challenges they were facing with national suppliers, not only international, but it was even heightened by states that closed down during the pandemic and some of the problems that they're still having to catch up with those production in those states that were shut down. And so there may be indeed an opportunity to move some of those suppliers, if not in Marion County, at least in Iowa, so that those threats do not happen again. And then the other option and opportunity you see here is a little over a third of our jobs are in stage 2 companies. Oftentimes people feel that most of our people work in the big companies, and that's actually not true. Those stage 2 companies employ a good amount of our workforce and have really opportunities to become big companies. So let's get into some of the data. First, we'll start with people. As you know, population increases come from 3 areas generally: births that are greater than deaths, international or abroad folks moving into the area, and graduates and young folks moving into the area. You can see this is not a new slide. We look forward to the 2020 census data that'll come out later this year, but where the populations have been and the estimates over the last decades. And looking just a little bit closer in our communities, so you can see what's happened in rural Marion County as well as Pella and Knoxville. And I also pulled the smaller communities out because when you put all the communities together, sometimes you can't see the differences in our smaller communities. By pulling them out, you can see where the trend lines are. But if you look overall, there's a lot of flat lines that are not really changing over the last while. Here is a comparison. I know you've seen this before of how Pella and Knoxville fit with some of their peers in the region and what's happened in population since 1900. And one of the interesting things when we look at population by age, we have slightly less preschoolers and young adults, and we have slightly more school-age kids, college-age kids, and older adults. So the ones to the far left, the babies, those under 5 years old, and those young adults that are 25 to 44 are the age groups that we have less than what the national or state average are. Population by race, you can see that we are, no surprise to many folks, we're dominated by white, but you can see that they're starting to make some trends in some of the other groups. This is a really interesting slide for migration. We're often asked, who is moving into Marion County and who is moving out? You can see the counties on the left are the counties that folks are moving into Marion County from those counties. And on the right, you can see the top counties that people from Marion County are moving out to. Here's a little bit different view of this. So movers from different states to Marion County, there were 600. Movers to different states from Marion County were 637. So a net loss there of folks moving to other states. However, you look around people moving within Iowa, and you can see there is a net gain of 282, as well as a net gain of movers from abroad of 88. In education, the governor's Future Ready Iowa Task Force is looking at those completers beyond high school. You can see where the US is, where Iowa is, where Marion County is, and where some of our individual communities are. There's still a lot of work, and especially as we look at those assemblers and how we can get those to maybe some of those associate degree programs to be ready for the next workforce occupations. Certified school enrollment, you can see what's happening in our schools. A couple of our schools are kind of flat, some are going down. You don't see huge increases in school enrollment. The graduation rate in Marion County still remains very strong. We do spend slightly more per pupil than the national average. The poverty rate in Marion County is 9.7. You can see how that compares to the Iowa and the US, as well as the drastic differences within our communities. This next couple of slides have both household income and family income, so I wanted you to understand the difference. Household income is the income of all people ages 15 and older who occupy the same housing unit, regardless of whether they're related or not related. Family income, on the other hand, is only households occupied by 2 or more people related by birth, marriage, or adoption. So single family homes would not be included in family income. People living together that are not associated would not be included. So that's a little bit of the difference between household income and family income. So you can see the median here for Marion County, as well as the median for some of our larger towns, and in comparison with some of their peers. The yellow line is the average for the median for Marion County, and you can see how that flows. Here, again, is another slide of our smaller communities in comparison with some of our neighboring smaller communities and how they compare to the median in Marion County. This provides you some information on our average weekly wage rate, as well as our labor force participation rate, which you can see are both over the US average. Here's another way to look at income. The green line going across is US and how that breaks down within various different income brackets. You can see the orange is Iowa and the blue is Marion County. You can see that we don't have quite as many on either end and are more concentrated in this kind of the central mid-level income brackets. So now what did we learn from our prime employers? And I'll tell you on this presentation, any slide that has the Best of Iowa logo, that means that that data is coming from our visits that we had with our employers. You can see that we visited 30 employers as part of this program and all the other counties within Iowa that participated this year. What we've learned is that, 50% don't have a remote worker policy, but 40% did, and 9% are considering it. And that was kind of an interesting discussion. Obviously, being so manufacturing centric, there are certain jobs in Marion County you cannot do remotely, but many of those companies, their office staff was working remotely. Here is one of the statistics we had on the key opening slide, about 71.9% having recruitment problems. I'm sure that's not a shocking factor to anybody who's talked to businesses. And as we talked to them in July and August, 75% of the companies were at normal staffing levels, which is right on par with what was happening kind of in the state. So although there might be places across the country where there were challenges with staffing levels, here in Marion County stayed pretty consistent with what was happening statewide. Another thing that we're keeping our eye on is the number of employers who have lost a high value employee in the last 6 months. So you can see that's almost double of what it was in the state. So our employers are having a difficult time keeping those high value employees. So it's not just a circumstance of not being able to find the assemblers and the folks like that, but also their top managers and folks like that. There is some issues both with probably, I would say it was a mixture of retirements and losing them to other opportunities. So here are some of the most difficult positions that our prime employers told us that they were having difficulty in finding. You can see many of those are technology related, but some of them are also customer service and management and people skills related. Now shifting over, looking at our businesses, from looking at our people, you can see a visual of how our industries break down with where the jobs are in Marion County. And here is this job diversity index score. Marion County's was at 0.59. It was 0.72 in the US and 0.73 in Iowa, so those were fairly consistent. The higher the number, the more diverse your job economy is. So ours being significantly lower shows that we don't have as much of a diversity as in jobs. And this slide really does play that out, where you can see the concentration of manufacturing versus what it looks like in Iowa and the US. However, it is also an asset that we rank in the top 2% of US counties for our percentage of jobs in manufacturing. This shows the annual growth rate of employment in all industries, comparing Marion County to the US. And this was the slide when I talked about the stage 2 companies. You can see in orange, the stage 2 companies, Marion County is the very bottom line. And it's very consistent throughout kind of our region and even throughout some of our big metropolitan counties that those stage 2 companies become a really dominant employer of jobs. This was what I was talking about, the top 15 Marion County occupations by number of jobs. And by far and away, we have over 1,000 team assemblers in Marion County. So that's our number one job, the number one thing that people are doing. This shows you kind of the top 15 of that. But when we look at wages in Marion County, here are the top mean annual wages by occupation. So you can see those are very heavy in the medical industry. Almost all of them are in some field of medical industry. There's only a couple that are not. Here's another one of the pieces of information we have from our workforce development, if you're interested, is the wage report, which gives you entry wage, experience wage, and mean annual salary of every occupation. I pulled out just a couple to give you an idea of what those occupations' wage levels are, but certainly if you'd like to have the full report, we can do that. This is occupations by location quotient. So how well we could draw occupations to Marion County. These are some of the occupations that we are good at being able to have opportunities for. And a little bit of the wave of the labor force, looking at it over the last 20 years of what's happened to people participating in the labor force in Marion County. And surprisingly, maybe not so surprisingly, it mirrors almost identical the unemployment rate. You can see the spike we had during 2020, and you can see how we've recovered, but then you see a slight uptick right now that's happening again, so we'll keep an eye on that to see what's happening. And here's the job disparity gap that I was talking about. I went on to Iowa Works, and they have 1,113 jobs posted on there from Marion County employers. Now, that's certainly not all the jobs probably in Marion County, but it's a good number of the jobs and gives us a good representation. And when I looked, the March unemployment claims, both initial and continuing in Marion County, were 306. So you can see there still relies that gap of 807 more jobs than we even have people for. This shows you where our job gains are happening. Not surprisingly, they're from startups and existing industry expansion primarily. And you can see how that looks around other counties in our peer area. This shows, where those net new county, how many net new jobs we are receiving in Marion County as compared to the rest of some of our peers. And this shows you which industries those net new jobs are coming from. So you see most of the jobs that are positive are either coming from manufacturing or professional and business services. Here is the positive as far as in the next 5 years. What do we think, what types of occupations do they predict? We'll have on the left is the number of jobs. So that's the ranking as far as, they're ranked by the number of jobs that will be created from where we are today. On the right is percentage of growth, and you have to kind of balance those two. Now, those occupations listed or highlighted in yellow are occupations that pay above the county's average wage level. Give you a moment just to digest that one. There's a lot of information, and like I said, certainly we will have this online so you can look over that a little bit closer. Here is the biggest caution red flag that I had seen, is that assemblers are going to have the most negative forecast of number of jobs. And we currently have over 1,000 team assembler positions in the county. So there is certainly an opportunity for us to talk to our friends at DMAC and Central and some of our educational institutions to see what can be done with our employers to help as they automate, as they bring in robotics, what can be done to retrain those assemblers into other occupations. As far as if you look at our number of businesses, you will see that most of our businesses are either self-employed or small employers having just 2 to 9 employees. That's where the vast number of our businesses are. But you can see by the other slide that I showed you earlier, those businesses do not quite employ as much as the stage 2, which is in orange, and the yellow and red. And obviously we don't have as many larger companies as we do smaller companies. And this shows kind of the relationship between the number of establishments, the number of employers, and the jobs, and some of our peers. A little bit of corporate tax. You'll see kind of the history of corporate tax on the left. Iowa, as its ranking, ranks 40th for overall state tax business climate. So certainly an opportunity there to work to improve Iowa's tax climate so that we can be more successful in attracting businesses from out of state. This new orders index really is just it's an Iowa statistic, but it gives us an idea of what's happening with manufacturing. And so we keep a tab on that since manufacturing is one of our prime driving industries. Commute times, average commute time in the Pella labor shed was 11 miles one way or 16 minutes. And again, going back to our prime employer results, who we talked to, most of the businesses we talked to were private for-profit businesses. 87% of them owned their company. The majority, or at least not quite the majority, but at least 40% almost were family owned. And here it shows that kind of scary fact that 1/3 of those prime employers did not have a succession plan. And you see the churning that's happening both in company ownership as well as company management changes. And so we're slightly ahead on both of those as compared to what's happening to businesses statewide. Company life cycle, we asked them their primary product and where they feel it is on its life cycle. And you can see the majority, we kind of are higher when it comes to emerging products but lower in the growing segment and a little higher in the maturing segment than what's happening statewide. The good news is a lot of our companies are introducing new products, both they currently have over the past years and they plan to in the next year. We typically are ahead of what the state average is in this, and that has continued even through the pandemic. Looking at where their markets are, we're fairly what I would call broken out, where 40% of them are serving a local Iowa market of our prime employers, 12% a more regional Midwest kind of market, 28%, a little over a quarter of them, their primary market is national, and 15% their primary market is international. A little bit, as we talked in July and August to our prime employers about what was happening with exports, 34% of the companies that we talked to do export. However, you'll see that things were remaining pretty stable as far as their export sales. Most of them, either reporting 80% of them stable, 10% decrease, and 10% increase. So for the most part, those sales were staying stable as long as the companies could get the supplies to create the product. Operations this summer, like I said earlier, 78% of our companies were open regular hours, regular levels of operation. We did have 3% of our companies indicate that they had actually had to add hours. And there was kind of a mixed board of where people felt, but most of them felt at that time that it would take about 12 weeks for customer demand to return to last year's levels. So now we're into that time frame of where most of them saw that it would take before their real operations returned to normal. As far as expansion, this probably shocked me more than anything. A third of our companies have plans to expand in the next 3 years and are moving forward with those plans. We have 3% that have plans to expand but have been postponed, and 6% that over actually the last year have new plans to expand. So you can see we're outpacing what's happening in the state. So that means more work to be done on what those companies will need as they plan to expand. We asked them a little bit about what assistance we could provide them, where their concerns are, and you can see here what they kind of indicated to us. Most of the assistance came around technology. That was a real big issue. Most of their concerns, quite honestly, were still finding employees and the economic uncertainty. And many of them expressed to us deep concern for their employees. They really do love and care for their employees and wanted to make sure that they were doing everything possible to keep them healthy and safe. And again, most of their financial stress really came from suppliers and customers. And finally, some of them are looking at what possibilities are out there for mergers and acquisitions to grow their business. This, again, goes back to that supply chain issue like I talked about earlier. There were some disruptions, some severe disruptions at that particular time when we were talking to them. We tried to work with them and help them gain resources. And you can see, again, that the overwhelming challenge, which I thought going into it, and we did have several that talked about international suppliers, but the bigger challenge was those shutdown states. That was tremendously threatening for some of our employers, not getting supplies out of those states that were not able to produce during the COVID crisis. So a little bit about our communities, and this is kind of the last segment of this. And so if you're dying of slides, we're almost through this. You can see how our communities, our families break down as far as households, as far as the type of makeup of our households in Marion County. A little bit about, houses with internet access. The voter participation rate is very high here. And this is kind of just some health statistics as far as hospital beds, availability per 1,000 people, population with no health insurance, cancer rates, some of those health concern issues. And here's the county health rankings by the University of Wisconsin does this. As a kind of a data indicator of various different areas, with green meaning good, yellow meaning fair, and red meaning poor. And as we all know, we talked about childcare. One of the challenges we found in our study was desired type. Many of the folks in our community, although they may be able to find childcare, it is not the type of childcare that they prefer. And you can see that the number of options of their DHS centers and DHS homes has continued to decline, making it even more difficult for our parents to find childcare. Looking statewide as far as, what percent of their income is spent for childcare for those folks that have to provide it. Statewide, the average is 11.8%. Here in Marion County, it's 11.1%. And this, you can see the cost for infant childcare as they kind of compare to different peer counties. And this slide is the same information, but for 4-year-old childcare. Obviously, there's a little bit of a price break when the children are older than infant care. Infant care seems to be the most challenging to be able to find and to afford. And some of our tracking based on census tracts, and we'll get more of this as the census comes out, but the differences between our communities as far as percentage of parents working, the population under 5, and how many total child care facilities. It's kind of weird because if there's a bunch of centers in one census tract, even though they're within a community, most of us understand that if a community is broken up into 2 or 3 census tracts, that people are probably going to be able to travel that distance. It's not like we're in a metro where going from one side of town is really prohibitive to folks. In housing, we can see that appreciation has gone up in Marion County by 21.6%. And you can see some of the population, about 20%, 22% of the population rent, and about 66% are homeowners. I've seen figures as high as 71% are homeowners, so it just depends on which sources you're looking at. One of the figures that was on the initial slide was the 108 single-family home permits that happened, and you can see the jump from 2019 to 2020 that has happened in building permits for single-family homes within Marion County, and how that compares really back to, you have to almost go clear back to 2007 to see the same type of activity that we've seen this last year in 2020.
It's not necessarily a good thing.
In Marion County, it takes 20 hours of work each week for folks to be able to afford their housing. And you can see again the change in housing value in Marion County as opposed to the nation. This was the figure about the fact that we live within a half mile, most of us, to parks, over 50% of us in Marion County. And this is a little bit of our traveler information. You can see when travelers come to Marion County, that's in blue, versus when travelers come to the state of Iowa. And each year, travelers to Marion County spend over 55 million. We know this last year that has taken a tremendous decline with everything that was shut down in 2020. We are forward to 2021 when travel and tourism can kind of regain those numbers that we're all used to. A little bit about sales and income tax rates, cost of living. You can see those comparisons, and a little final information from our employers. You can see that they felt like, during COVID, 87% of them felt like the community infrastructure was okay to meet their needs, was adequate. You can see, and this is not surprising with so many companies looking to expand, that they anticipate more need for electricity and internet speed. And as far as satisfaction, you can see the utilities that they're most satisfied with and the ones that they're the least satisfied with. And we go through these various different community assets. And so you can see the trend on the far right in orange for childcare that has continued. Our employers, as we ask them to rate childcare, continues to decline, continues to, be poor in their mind. You can see for those folks that are sitting in from the community colleges, those opinions have increased, as well as the schools over the last several years. So you can see kind of how those assets are comparable in the minds of our businesses. Here is some of our infrastructure assets. Obviously, the one that has the wildest line on this is public transportation, and a lot of questions about public transportation with some of our employers. And you see community services as well as government services and
Property tax assessment.
their ratings for each of those assets.
It's not very good.
So in summary of all of those, the highest rated, and you can see the lowest rated, as well as those trending upward and those trending downward. So a lot of this I'm going to go over fairly quickly because we talked about many of our projects, but I wanted to pause for a moment both to thank our communities for their work in working together, which sometimes isn't the easiest to do, as well as our state and regional partners, because none of this is possible without partners. And a little bit about each of the projects that we've done over the years: the Roger Brooks destination assessment, the housing study, the child care study, and the ones that we're currently working on right now that you heard. And those are directly tied to some of those key findings in the beginning of the presentation. And just a couple developments that are very interesting that are happening around the region. We have the New Horizon Academy, Laley expansion, the Prairie Ridge housing development, and the VA demolition as very exciting projects and developments that we'll be hearing more and more about over the next coming months. And I wanted to let you know that we still are continuing many projects. We hope to get Leadership Red Rock kicked off again this fall, but we still maintain our websites, and we just had a wonderful top 10 under 40 in Best of Red Rock. Thanks to KNIA again for helping us with those announcements. And we have just released the Red Rock Guide, so if you'd like copies of those, please contact me and I'd be happy to get those to you. So as we navigate our future, we hope that you will take the opportunity to engage with us. Like I said, we will have this data available to you. And I know I have talked through this very quickly, very difficult to digest all this information. But I wanted to at least give you an idea of what information we have out there, and we will put those together so folks can access that. So is there any questions?
Carla, I have a question.
Sure.
Do you know on that breakdown of 807 jobs what it would be per town? Did you do an estimate at all on that?
No, I didn't, but I certainly could. But I just looked countywide.
Okay. Yeah, I would be interested to know.
Okay, that's the filter I put on it, but I can certainly look that up.
Carla, on the child care, is that based on income, or is it just a flat rate for an age group of children?
Those were median, so they're taking what everybody in the county pays and finding a median. So that's just kind of the middle road of what folks are paying for infant and 4-year-old childcare.
Have you got any feel for any of the employers that they would be willing to maybe help pay some of that cost for child care to get employees?
Yeah, one of the things I want to point out too is that those were only folks paying at DHS regulated centers, so at child care centers and DHS homes. Those folks who stay in grandma and grandpa's home or a neighbor's home that is not a registered daycare is not included in that. So that's one kind of perspective, because typically if people are staying at their neighbor's and their neighbor is not a registered daycare, they can certainly do that, but those prices are usually a little bit less than what's happening at the registered centers. But the only data that the state has is those from the registered centers. So that's why it's a little higher. Second part of your question, yeah, many of our employers very much know about this gap. They were very involved in our child care study, and that's what you see what Pellicorp has stepped forward to most recently, and putting together a new center. I think it's somewhere around, it will net out around, eventually around 84 new spots. There's many pieces of legislation right now going on to help some of the child care issues, and hopefully some of those will make their way to the governor's desk this year, and some of these issues can be handled.
Carla, are you finding out that those people it's that in between, that they can't afford the facilities? Because, the facilities charge more. And then, it's because those numbers are also not necessarily calculated by the state level. I mean, does it give us a picture that's kind of skewed?
Well, I mean, the hard part is if you look at what parents want, they do want their kids in centers. The challenge is there's not enough spaces in centers. So then they're having to find other means, and that means usually some neighbor or someone that they know staying home with their children. So that's the challenging part, and that's why I said the issues are a couple. Childcare is not one of those items that is a one fixed solution. there are the issues that people want a certain desired type and we don't have enough of that type. There's the issue of affordability and those being able to just even afford and take on a job when, if they take on a job that's slightly over the averages and then they don't meet any criteria for supplemental, they go off a cliff. And so that's one issue. There's issues with, the regulations and the costs for centers to be able to offer childcare and what their staff has to have as far as training and certifications. There's just a multitude of issues that we learned through the child care study that we didn't know before. Continue to work on those, but it is not a one easy solution issue.
Thank you.
Carla, just one broad question. How will this data be used to recruit new businesses to Marion County? What's the plan to use this information for recruitment of employers?
This is what we're going to provide, as well as other information to at AD Advantage that is doing our targeted industry analysis. They collected the qualitative data from the stakeholder meetings, and that data will be the basis partially. They're also using their intelligence and their knowledge of those sectors and location quotients. And once we get through this process, we should in the next couple of weeks start to hear their preliminary kind of analysis of what targeted sectors. So it's getting us to those targeted sectors, understanding our assets for business. And so some of this data provides us some of those assets and what we have to offer.
And is there a component of this, or will there be a component of the economic risks that our county faces if we don't do certain things?
I think, I don't know if there'll be a quantifiable risk, but I think those are certainly be identified as items of, the challenges like I just showed with the job diversity index. That makes us, just like we talked about with the national suppliers, we were at a critical juncture when those states were closed down because a lot of our employers are in manufacturing, and if they couldn't get the supplies they needed to build product, then they were closed down. And so there's some of those critical issues I think will be there in that report, but right now we're in the data gathering part of the process and we're not yet to the findings of that.
Okay, good. Yeah, I would be interested in that, and I'm calling out one of your charts specifically where we talk about valuation, house valuation. So if you note your highs, well, your previous high was before the housing market collapsed in 2007. Okay, and now we're rising again. So from a market analysis standpoint, some people might say that's actually not a good thing, but a bad thing. Because remember, the last time this happened, there wasn't a good, it took us into a 10-year, 8-year slow growth economy. So I guess I would be curious from this group you're with, if there could be further analytics behind some of these charts and graphs that point out that rising valuations aren't necessarily a positive when it's cheap interest, cheap money, or what I'll call a skewed economic dynamic. And we have to be mindful of that as we go forward, but I'll let you handle that with your group.
Yeah, and that's exactly why we brought them in, because they're experts at doing that type of analysis. We've tried to do the legwork and gather the data because we can do that. And we're really relying on them to help us understand and analyze the data in a higher level than we've ever been able to do before.
Okay.
Hey, Carla, we have this data, and I know the employer, the employer input, especially, what they need, and I understand the data is important, but will this data be presented to the people that make the changes, like our legislators and things like that?
How are we going to execute?
Yeah, how are we going to execute this data? I mean, the people that are decision makers at the state and federal levels need to have this information and say, hey, this is what our employers need this is what our county needs to survive. How do we get this? Is this information going to be shared with those types of people?
Today is the starting off point, and one of the things the commission had talked about to do was to actually do this and record it in a manner that we could share both socially and we could share with stakeholders and other folks easily so that they could have the ability to walk through the information and digest the information. So certainly we could add some of those stakeholders to our kind of playlist of who we want to get in front of to show this information to, as well as the written report. This is a PowerPoint, but the written report has, which I'm not quite done with, has more, what do I say, analysis to it than just what we were able to quickly go through today.
Right.
But that's certainly a good feedback, and we can certainly get in front of our state and federal representatives to try to see if we can provide this information to them also.
Because I noticed a lot of the concerns that they had is the legislative issues.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Steve's exactly right. If you're going to have a chart or a graph that says there's a concern about, let's say, property tax assessment, that's down for the last couple of years because that's top of mind for everybody, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yet property taxes are the only way that we can fix our roads. And you have a population that's not increasing,
Right.
so there's no spread, and you've got artificially low interest rates. That's almost a perfect storm. And then you have to say, which way do you go with that? I mean, sure, we could lower, and there are groups that want to lower property taxes or want to cap property taxes. But then that has an automatic ripple effect through everything that we do that's on this chart. So they need to understand that tax policy, and you've heard me talk about this before, is the key driver to new business growth, especially if you want companies to come here. Companies that are here, they know the environment, but to get a company here, they're gonna look at that business tax stuff, Carla, and they're gonna say, hey, no way, I'm gonna come here. Especially if you're a tech firm or you're an advanced firm. Why would you? You don't have broadband, you got high taxes, and you don't have any people. Why would I come? So we have to start somewhere with these legislative folks to get them off the dime and stop focusing on meaningless stuff. Otherwise, rural Iowa can't compete. Just not possible. So Steve's point is exactly right.
Sure, and we'll see what we can do with that and see if we can get in front of them, whether that's one-on-one appointments or with a group, but I would guess it'll probably have to be one-on-one.
Steve or Mark, do we still have our county lobbyist?
We do.
I think that would be a perfect place to start and, let her carry that message forward as well.
Karen, I talk to Kelly on a weekly basis about these issues.
I'm not sure she's not on. She might be on.
I think they need to hear from different directions.
And Karen, here's my
Kelly's on this, by the way.
Is Kelly on this?
Yep.
Okay, so Kelly, you know that we've talked about this a lot, right? But Karen, I guess we need some assistance, especially from your side of the river. We need the Vermeers, we need the Pella Windows, we need those folks to get in. They contribute a lot to political campaigns, and they're very involved, and that's good. But this has to be an issue everybody talks about. It can't just be Kelly and us, it's gotta be a total county approach.
Mhm.
And it seems to be something that gets missed because we get comfortable with our own industries, we get comfortable with our environment, and there are other issues we want to be concerned about. But they need to get more involved in this side of the discussion if they are not. And I don't know the answer to that question. You would probably know more than I would.
Yeah.
I think we have Daryl on the call, who is very involved from the Vermeer standpoint as well. And I appreciate those comments. I'm just trying to look at all angles. How can we give them that full court press and who can we engage in the process?
Absolutely. And if there's any way, Karen, we can partner together and get legislators in the same room, Carla, to this point, and have you go through this presentation with our large businesses, our small businesses, county supervisors, our city leaders, to talk through these things, that would be, I think, a time well spent. Because it is a full court press. Karen, you're exactly right. Totally agree with that.
When we're all on the same page, it makes a difference. Yeah.
And then the projects that you showed, Carla, well, 3 of those projects, Lely, Prairie Ridge, the VA, all required county dollars to happen. So we're leveraging property tax money, our balance sheet, to support this kind of growth, all taxpayers, Marion County. So it's incumbent upon us to take a full countywide approach to try to get some of these things to our legislators. Because some of these policies are going to be restrictor plates on how far we can go, especially with new job growth, new employers. So I know you've heard me say this before, but we really need that collaboration, and it can't be segmented anymore. Otherwise, politicians deflect this stuff. They propose middle of the road approaches. They say, we'll give you income tax relief, but we'll raise the sales tax to 12%. So we go from a progressive tax system that doesn't work to a regressive tax system that impacts the poor and the lower income folks, which is dumb. So, sorry, that's my technical term of the day.
No,
But I think that's something that certainly Karen and Emma and I can maybe get together and put our heads around and develop a plan to how to approach that if they're willing to do that,
Yeah.
which I'm guessing they would be. So I think that would be great. We do need to move on kind of in the interest of time and everybody's schedules. I did want to give the communities an opportunity if they had anything to share with the group that they wanted to about what's happening. Karen, do you have anything from Pella?
I do, but first of all, I want to just thank you for putting all this information together. I know I'm going to be sending you an email to present this to a couple of our different councils. Mark, you had asked, how can we use this to attract employers? And I think that is fantastic. But we also use that to really look at areas in how we can drive our work and areas we need to work on. So really appreciate that. From the Pella standpoint, Carla highlighted a couple of projects, so I won't go over those. But looking more at a higher level, we are also working on placemaking. We have some what we think are very exciting things coming out. We're going to present to City Council next week, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. But once we do and kind of have all of those blessings and direction that we need, then we can announce that. But some really exciting stuff, really to work on how do we attract and retain, especially young professionals, but also the entire workforce population that our entire county needs. So that's one thing we have working on. And in the interest of time, I'll just kind of leave it there.
Okay, thanks. Anyone from Knoxville, Emma or Brian, do you want to give an update on anything happening in Knoxville?
Yeah, this is Brian. I can jump in. I'll echo what Karen said. Carla, thank you for the information. This is great. We'll do the same thing, and we love to take this, dissect it, and then see what we can improve and get better. So thank you for all the information. I'll quickly go down a few things. I don't want to steal the county's thunder. With the DEA, obviously we mentioned that. We know that's a big project and it's well underway. The demolition aspect on the county side, we've been working closely with them on our master plan. Once the demolition's over, we'll start with our master plan of redevelopment. And something I wanted to let everyone know, we've been trying to work through, and we don't have a date set yet, but the Area Ministerial Association would like to decommission the chapel before demolition. So we'd like to have a decommissioning ceremony, kind of somewhat of a groundbreaking, just to give people that chance to come out. Maybe we'll give some small public tours to the public, half an hour tour, something like that. Anyway, I just wanted to let you guys know to be aware of that coming up in the near future here. So I think that'll be good for the public to get one last chance to have a look at the campus before demolition. From the city's side, a few of the projects we're working on, we've got to finish our trails project. We didn't get that finished last year. So that'll be getting paved here in the near future. East Elementary, now that the county has vacated that and gone back to the courthouse, we are looking heavily at redeveloping that area. Looks like most likely it'll turn into a residential area. That'll be good for us too. And the 3-lane conversion is almost over on Highway 14. We're looking, they're syncing up the traffic light information, doing some pedestrian ramp stuff. And we're going to, once that's completed, the DOT is going to do a traffic study. We're looking at trying to either reduce or keep the be the same throughout that whole corridor and changes so many times. We're trying to make that a little easier for the traveling public. Those are just a few updates that we have, I guess.
Great, thanks, Brian. Anyone else that has updates from your community or your organization that you'd like to share with the group? Supervisors, do you have anything additional you would like to share with your group?
Steve, Keisha?
I don't have anything at this point. Oh, well, actually, Carla, we can talk a little bit just about the website, where, you know, we're going to be launching hopefully here soon by the summer, a new website. So we're excited at that as a county, and we have a new logo. And so I know with the flyer that for the broadband, we've used that for that. So I appreciate that. Appreciate you working on that. Carla, I know you've dedicated quite a bit of time to making sure we get this information out. So appreciate it.
Yeah, and the only update, Carla, and you touched on it, Brian touched on it, is we've got, I think, tremendous progress with the Prairie Ridge development. So my hat's off to Mike Nardini and the team over in Pella, Keisha sitting on the committee, moving that forward. I think that's a great demonstration of cooperation between city and county government, as is the VA. I think that's another example. Brian and the folks in Knoxville are working tirelessly to along with us, to make this work for the benefit of all of us. So it's an exciting time when you look at all these collaborations and how they are coming about. And there'll be more. I think we'll have more opportunities, so we need to look for those. So anyway, some great progress. We're looking forward to the start of demolition, as Brian said.
Well, great. I don't think we have anything more, so I'll let the supervisors, I'll turn it back over to you to adjourn the meeting.
Great. Anything else to add, Steve or Keisha?
No.
All right, with that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make motion to adjourn.
Second?
McCombs,
Aye.
Ramey,
Aye?
Johnner,
Aye.
Very good. Thank
And
you.
I'd just like to let everybody know our next meeting is scheduled for June 2nd at 9 a.m. So put June 2nd on your calendar, and we look forward to seeing you then. If you have items you'd like to include in the meeting, please send me an email and we will definitely try to get those in. Thank you, everyone.
Carla, thank you very much.
Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
Thanks, Carla.